University and appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Many thanks for your company.
Thank you for having me.
Sheila Olang is development economist and also the young voice on the bench. Lovely having you here.
Thanks for having me, Ayub.
And Javas Bigambo commentates on governance and politics, joins us this evening on the bench.
Thank you so much. Good evening. How are you?
And many thanks for your time.
Great.
And also we are joined by Wakili Willis Otieno on the bench this evening. Thanks for your time, Advocate.
Thank you very much.
A lot to go through. Let's begin, Prof, with what the head of state today said, and seems to be the consistent line, appears to be now his common denominator. You want me to go where? Seems legitimate question on his part, but ideally does it satisfy the calls that are questioning the governance style of his administration?
So I think, yes, there is a clarion call that says Ruto must go. It represents certain aspirations. But where it is coming from a place where people are demanding accountability, where people are demanding that justice be done, where people are demanding that corruption be dealt with. That's where it is coming from. If you asked any of the young protesters who go to the streets regularly if they want to replace the president, they will tell you absolutely not. I am not interested in replacing the president. I am interested in changing the governance system. Okay. That the leaders in place be responsive to the people, be accountable to the people, and follow the dictates of the Constitution as it is written. As we have seen over and over again, these are people who have internalized the Constitution. Mm-hmm. These are people who believe in the promise of the Constitution, and they expect that their leaders will live by the dictates of that document. And what they see out there, not only in the president, but in the entire political class, is that these are people who are struggling very hard to live in a way that is against what the Constitution provides for. And they're getting confused. And in that confusion, they're going to the streets and exercising their constitutional right to say, I have a right to protest. And then they're being told, no, you don't. And they're being shot and they're being hit with tear gas and so on. And they're getting very, very confused. I think if you speak to the young people today, they get very confused. But the Constitution says I can do this. Yeah. And then you're telling me I can't do it. And so that is where this clarion call is coming from. I wouldn't take it necessarily literally when you see a young person on the street saying Ruto must go. But this young person is saying this system of governance, which I call a colonial canoeism, yeah, if you like, must go. That mentality that power resides elsewhere other than in the people must go. That mentality that impunity reigns supreme, yeah, must go. That is what I hear if you speak to the young people, if you speak to the people who are protesting. This is what I hear them say, that there's a system of governance that is promised by the Constitution, and that is what they're looking to see. Yeah. Now, as to if the leaders in place leave one way or another, there are constitutional mechanisms for filling vacant offices in all offices of state, whether it be the presidency, deputy presidency, yeah, parliament, ministers, and so on. There are constitutional methods of replacing people when those offices fall vacant. And we can enumerate, yeah, those, and they're listed out in the, yeah, Constitution.
And Sheila, being one of the voices on the streets during Saba Saba and also the commemorative demonstrations to mark 1 year since events of June 25th last year, are the young people concerned in any way about over the cross-Atlantic fights between the president and his former deputy, Rigathi Gachagua, given what the head of state said and what Gachagua continues to say? Is that any of your business, or the call for good governance remains consistent?
Ayub, I think, like you said, as somebody who went out to the streets last year, when I see where we have kind of progressed to a year later, the one phrase I would use to describe where we are today is just tone deafness. I don't think they're getting it. There's two sides speaking, but they're not speaking to each other. I think the leadership is not speaking to us, and we are not being, I don't know if we're not speaking to them, but there's a certain tone deafness that is going on. My positioning is very simple. Somebody once said, it's the economy, stupid. It's the economy. So all of this transatlantic back and forth, who becomes president, who does not become president, irrelevant. Even if we put you today as the president, if you do not fix the issues that we are raising as young people, we are all wasting time. What this boils down to for me is quite simple. When we went out last year, I was very happy and I was very confident to go out. Like I said before, I'd never been part of a protest before because I'd never risk my life for a political party or otherwise. But this time I did it because it was issue-based. It was because we were trying to attack a system. It was because we were giving everybody who had been given a mandate or leadership an opportunity to change course. And if you remember leading up to the 25th, 25th was more of the climax of it. On the initial days when we went in, when we were saying, you know, it's leaderless, it's tribeless, it's partyless, it was meant to be a kind of a golden opportunity for the leadership to say, okay, now that you're not threatening my position or my future as the president, as the MP, as the governor, you're giving me an opportunity to correct course. But I think what's going on is there's just a certain entitlement, which as young people, we are trying to retaliate and say, you know, usitubebe ufala, like, we are reading the Constitution, we are understanding what our rights are, and if you continue at this rate, then we will not accept it. So we are at a point where the political class has now uprooted itself, gone into one room, and they're having a conversation, and then they've again left us, 70% of the population, outside the room. So they're busy having the cross-Atlantic, whatever conversations they're having, and they're not sticking to the issues. The issues are still the same. We look at the inflation rate today, versus last year, we're still at the same. We're looking at unemployment. We're looking at the drivers of the economy. They're still the same, and we're still not investing in them. Okay. So if we do not stick to the issues, and if we do not address the same issues that we had last year, then I don't think this is going to end. Okay. Yeah.
And talking of the talks, there's a proposal by the former Prime Minister. We'll expound more on that, on the conclave that he has proposed during the Saba commemorative protest. Will, is coming to you. Looking at what's happening within the political gallery, it's no doubt that no one has the moral high ground, is it, when it comes to the moral authority?
You know, one thing that we must all appreciate is that that's a legacy politician's talk. It is not about the people. And we've been there, done that. And we have on record several documents that have been developed and designed when people go out to agitate. Look at their full implementation. In fact, yesterday on this very TV station, the crocodile came out and told us the alligator is sick. That is Edwin Sifuna. There's a signatory to the 10-point agenda. A signatory came out and told us what we signed that we're going to do is not happening. Then on the same breath, we are still proposing that you have a conclave. I mean, if that which was signed last year, is not being implemented.
This year, early this year.
It was early this year. Is not being implemented. If anything, we now have more deaths this year than we had last year. What conclave, what conversation are you having with the people? You're not. So it means that is an elite conversation, politicians sitting down to discuss their issues. But what we have in this country, what we have is an agitation by the people that for the first time we are going to break the system. This colonial old system that has superintended itself over us from the time of the Mzungu colonialist to present day. That system is what is being rejected. And if you ask about, for example, the cross-Atlantic barbs between Gachagua and Ruto, what's the difference? Again, legacy politicians throwing barbs at each other. Kenyans don't care about what Rigathi Gachagua says or what William Ruto says to Rigathi Gachagua. Kenyans care about joblessness, the high cost of living, the escalating cost of healthcare system, the failed university funding model. So those are the things that Kenyans want to discuss. And the system is trying to perpetuate itself by trying to control the political narrative to be about them. The children of the system want to be the ones to compete and to occupy these positions. They don't want the Kenyans to have a genuine conversation that will give them a leader.
But Willis, Kenya is not a monarchy, is it? It's a democracy.
It's not a monarchy, but what they are doing, they are trying to control the political narrative. You suppress the issue that Kenya is agitating about and try to force, for example, a Gachagua or a Matiang'i or a Kalonzo to be the face of that which Kenyan people are agitating for, and then provide a competition between one side and the other. But they're all the same. As it is, and we've said this before, look at Gachagua, look at Kalonzo, look at Martha. Those were all deputies at one time. Look at Raila, look at Ruto. Those were running for president. Now the deputies on one side and the presidents on one side. The deputies have been joined by a former prime cabinet secretary, I mean, de facto prime minister, so to speak. And you're telling me, out of that competition, you are going to have a new Kenya, a rebirth. No. You can only have a rebirth when you decide, legacy politicians, keep to your barbs. But let's have a political competition that is about what the people of Kenya are agitating about.
Okay. Javas, coming to you. When you hear the president say that, not the first time certainly questioning, then how should I go? It's a democracy. If the people refresh his mandate, well and good. If they don't, then he goes home packing. Regardless, though, is he being distracted and kept off the lane, given that his responses have been largely meant to respond to what the opposition figures have been saying, regardless, but amongst the many?
You know, Ayub, you asked this question and we're having this discussion this night at a time when all of us are having existential concerns about our democracy, about governance, and the desire to respond to the question that Martin Luther King Jr. asked, where do we go from here? Now, President William Ruto has asked that question. How do you want me to go? Because the people said, or people were chanting, Ruto must go. Now, this question is not just a simple one. It is about the integral issues about the social contract that he has with the people. It is about the desire of the people to have a government to be more accountable, to deliver on its mandate. And the other thing is that maybe the president is trying to invite the people on the other side to a conversation with him when he's asking the question, how do you want me to go? And the question then would be, to go where? Because when he was campaigning, he said he's going to State House to work for the people. Mm-hmm. Now, the people, of course, have been raising issues about accountability issues. For me, the greatest challenge that I have with all these happenings is how we are breeding a culture of intolerance. Political intolerance, which itself is an existential threat to our democracy. Yes, you've asked Willis the question to do with the dialogue that has been mentioned, the conclave by Honorable Raila Odinga. And we know that democracy by its nature is a child of dialogue. But for the longest time, the kind of dialogues that have been there have been led by politicians, benefited politicians, and not the people. If at all it's a question of having that, like right now we are having a conversation here, a dialogue. Well, we've had the opposition saying, or the regardless saying they don't want any kind of dialogue, but they are dialoguing in various spaces. So the question is this: we are creating spaces or opportunities that are intolerant on some issues as we tolerate other issues that favor certain cliques or groups. For me, I think, given what happened last year, 2024, given what has happened this year, the commemoration of June 25th, and then the Saba Saba, it is time for us to appreciate that the kingdom of sobriety has not been actually fully conquered. Mm-hmm. We need to come together as a people, as a nation, ask ourselves critical questions with critical answers. We have got the president who is the head of state and government. He cannot run away and is not running away from responsibilities. He needs to respond to that. Now, as the president asks that question, is it possible that he wants to go before or outside the brackets of the framework that has been provided for by the Constitution as an election cycle? I doubt. And if at all we believe in the rule of law, I had Willis' relative yesterday speak here, Honorable Safuna, that there is the issue that was primary, the removal of President William Ruto. But you know, integral to the Constitution of Kenya and our constitutional democracy is the place of the rule of law. Mm-hmm. In this conversation that President William Ruto is inviting the country to respond, how do you want me to go? Where is the place of the rule of law? In safeguarding our democracy, in the government delivering. And for me, if the people are concerned about service delivery, I've been asking myself, Ayub, executive in the Constitution is at 2 levels. The national level headed by the president, the county level headed by the governors. The people are concerned about service delivery at all levels, and they want service delivered by the president and the national government and the county governments. Trouble is that Ayub, we are so hypocritical as a people, driven by separatist and sectarian politics, that we are likely to fall in the danger of missing the bigger picture.
Okay. And talking about the bigger picture, Prof, coming to you, then how does the president included here and the former prime minister move away and whitewash the wholesale indictment on their part by the public? The president had quick fixes. The blessing in disguise came in the form of the June 25th protest last year. He made mega pledges, compensation of the families, lessening his advisors. He ended up increasing them up to the cabinet level numbers. The compensation never happened as was structured. Austerity, it was just on paper. And the other question, which was on the other important component of the 4 major promises he made. Then, in the midst of this trust deficit, how can the political class then come out of the space in which they are pigeonholed in the eyes of the public?
I think what I hear from the protests, what I hear from what the people are saying, is that people have lost faith in the operations of the existing political class. People do not trust that the politicians will do the right thing. This is what I'm hearing. And the politicians themselves are not doing their class any favors, because many times they're not fulfilling the promises that they have made to the people. And, you know, the people who are the voters of today are people who want to believe in your promises. There are people who want to trust that when you say, I'll do this in 6 months, that you will actually do it in 6 months. And when you don't do it in 6 months, they do not brook any excuses. So I think the political class, to help themselves, if you like, they need to realize that they're dealing with a new generation of voters, a new generation of Kenyans. And these are not people whom you will tell things, and then there's a long news cycle that takes weeks before they can figure out what you said several weeks ago and that it hasn't happened. Today, it's instant. You say things today, and it's circulating all over the world. And you make promises, and there are people who keep track of those promises. So we just have to realize that the old software of governance needs to be upgraded to new software based on, firstly, the new constitution, but also the new generation of an increasing majority of voters who are young, who are connected, and who are digital, and who are instant consumers of the news that is happening right now. So if you realize that this environment has changed, it is not the old folk that used to come for political rallies and you tell them things and they say, you know, I've seen everything and whatever you're telling me is not new, and they would go away knowing maybe you won't do it, but they don't care. This is a new generation that expects you to do what you say that you'll do.
And Sheila, looking at what the former deputy president has been saying during his US tour, ideally every day on the news bulletins, the president responding to him. We have talked about the cross-Atlantic fights. But is it also on the flip end an exposure of how we have exported our bad mannerism to the American continent, which was largely a reflection of how the government lieutenants never learned from what they exported as bad manners to Addis Ababa, the diplomatic capital of the continent, in campaigning for Odinga, yet they only had 1 vote under the president's name?
I think America is going through its own fair share of political issues. And I keep telling people all the time, I think maybe the previous political class or generations were able to do a lot of things in darkness. Maybe there were times when I know my parents used to say everyone was looking forward to traveling abroad and that's how you saved yourself. Yeah, nobody wants us out there. We have to fix home. I think if you talk to a lot of us young people, we want to stay home. We want Kenya to work for us because we have so much pride. We are a generation that is so much more Pan-Africanist and very Kenya-centered, and we love Kenya. And sometimes we are scorned because they're saying, but if you really love Kenya, then you would really, just be quiet because Kenya needs to stay stable. And I always tell them, the more you continue in this route, you are the one who is destabilizing Kenya more than anybody else, because you cannot convince me that you have a big chunk. Let's have some basic numbers, right? In the last election in 2022. So you had about 7 million voted for President Ruto. You had another maybe 7 million voted for Raila. You had about 8 million that just did not vote. Who are these 8 million? Have you asked yourself, who are these 8 million who just did not show up to the ballot and they never voted? They're the ones out there now who are making noise and saying, well, neither candidate is mine. I'm just sitting here on my own trying to say I want to fix the issues. Maybe this is them. My point is that the majority did not even vote in 2022. So you have to take this plight quite seriously. All of this is a distraction. You got to fix the system. There's no shortcut here. The more we keep wasting time discussing what tribe is going to do where and which one is going to combine with the other, we are going to waste time. I think what we need to do is we need to roll up our sleeves. We need to ask ourselves, Ayub, a basic indicator of how we want to diagnose this economy. Prior to this administration coming in, we had an inflation rate of almost 6%. Today, that inflation rate has been brought down. Now we are talking about maybe 3.4%. Now, that's a very good macroeconomic indicator. Why are people still on the streets? Why are people still on the streets despite the fact that inflation rate is going down? It's because the purchasing power, the common 190, we don't have money in our pockets. That's the symptom of what you're seeing here. And so what you need to do to fix that is really to go back and ask yourself, well, how do we then stimulate the economy at a micro level? How do we ensure that we're supporting small businesses? How do we ensure that we have some certain current systems that work in Kenya? How do we promote them? How do we, for example, employ more people into the formal financial sector instead of having people out there and now running away because of taxes, running away from being formalized into the system? These are the questions we're supposed to be grappling with. The government is supposed to be an enabler in order to help increase common mwananchi's purchasing power. Everything else, and I keep saying this, whatever else we discuss here is just we're wasting a lot of time because you will still have people on the streets over and over and over again. There is no shortcut. Okay.
Willis, when we get back from the break, I'll begin with you. And it seems, ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing shadowy about the Kenyan politician. They plan in the public, and we had seen the objectification of women in political rallies across the country. The empowerment programs that we had seen dubbed that way. A woman in the county of Kisii was given 2,000 shillings and she had 31 members, each ended up with 64 bob. We'll talk all about that when we get back from the break. And also the youth question and the IBC, what awaits the Erastus Edung Ethicon-led commission ahead of the elections in 2027. All that is on the bench after the break here on the broadcast, and we welcome your questions and observation as well. Later, I'll be displaying them on the magic wall before we close up the show. We are back with more after the break. Stay tuned.